Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm your host, Mansa Musa. In America, the prison industrial complex has monetized every aspect of imprisonment. Every aspect of imprisonment is monetized to the extent that everybody that's incarcerated is not only serving time, but have to pay for the time that they're serving. So much so that some places, they actually pay for to live, to stay in prison, and they're being told that if you got a job, a percentage of your money is going towards us, not going towards the whole in the event that a person is released, but the whole and go back into the state's coffers. Joining me today is Michael Johnson, a policy analyst that's going to talk about a report that he did called The Hidden Costs of Prison. Welcome, Mike.
How you doing, Mansa?
I'm good. Hey, so tell our audience, introduce yourself, tell our audience who you are and what you do.
So my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a senior policy analyst at DC Fiscal Policy Institute. And, you know, my work really focuses on examining the costs, particularly of jail and prison. And we focus mainly on DC, but we know this issue is something that affects people across the country. So that's a little bit about me. And currently, sorry for the noise in the background and everything. I'm at a policy conference in Atlanta right now. But
Okay.
good to be here.
Okay, thank you for coming on and joining us. As I said in the beginning, you wrote this report called The Hidden Costs of Prisons. Now, we know that, and I served 48 years prior to being released. When I first went into the system, a lot of the infrastructure of the prison that I was in was funded and financed by the state. The food came from the state, the medical was state, the clothing was state, everything, the entire infrastructure of the Maryland prison system was basically state. So the money that was being used to maintain the prison industrial complex during that time was state funded. Since that time, I've noticed that as the years went on, when they allowed telephones in, they was private. The medical facilities, they became private. The commissary, it became private. The clothing, it became private. Now, based on your report, all right, before we peel back on some of the layers, was you able to glean from your research the extent of how prison has become monetized in terms of like the infrastructure?
So we were able to definitely get a good sense of that. And so my report focuses on DC specifically. So we looked at the budget and funding for the DC jail in particular. And one of the things that came out of the report is exactly what you're talking about, is this privatization of so many services that go into the prison and jail system. From the phone systems, like you mentioned, which are private, and folks pay 8 cents per minute, which is just about $1.20 for a 15-minute phone call. And then, commissary as well. Those are all things that folks, while they're incarcerated, have to pay, in addition to paying for any fines that you're imposed at the time you're sentenced. But also, just being able to live day to day is one of those things where it's really, so unaffordable that a lot of times people have to ask for support from their families, from their relatives, communities. And that's something that, I personally experienced, with my father being incarcerated for most of my life, and having to send him money every now and again, pay to even email him through JPay. And that was as a teenager. So we think about all the different costs that goes into the jail and prison system. Um, and it's not just impacting the folks that are incarcerated. It's really impacting, especially the families of folks
Right.
incarcerated.
And let's talk about, because like you say, this report primarily focus on DC jail, but this report really is a overview of how all prisons and jails are ran relative to the monetization of it. So we don't want our audience to think that because we're talking about DC jail, every aspect of the DC jail is also in Cook County, also in Alabama, also in upstate Washington, any of the southern detention centers. The same principle applies. The privatization of the infrastructure, be it medical, be it food, be it clothing, and I said earlier, housing. But let's talk about the DC jail, and I want to reflect on this aspect of it. Okay, the jail is primarily funded by the money for the jail. It comes out the DC budget. Come out and they allocate so much money each year towards the maintenance and the running of the jail. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So then, how is it that from what you was able to gather, how is it that uh they don't that they transfer the cost of telephone, the cost of medical, and the cost of commissary to the individuals that's incarcerated when they're when the money's already being why is it not the reverse? Why is these companies are these I know these companies gotta be paying the jail. So why is it the cost being transferred to the individual if you have any insight on that?
And the fact of the matter is really about pushing those costs onto to the people in incarcerated themselves. And like you said, it's not just DC, but we have the system where it's intentionally
Mm-hmm.
exploiting and extracting resources, particularly from when we think about the prison and jail population, black people primarily, especially within DC. But
Right.
and it really goes into our perceptions of um, what people deserve, I believe,
Right.
and you know I think there's this narrative across the country that for the folks that are incarcerated, you know they should be paying for everything, but at the same time, we're not paying living wages. We're paying folks $1, $2 a day,
Right. Right.
or in some states like Louisiana, not paying them anything at all for working.
Right.
And so it's a lot of to be honest, is um, just continuing from the legacy of slavery,
That's right.
and we set this country up in a way where um, this country was founded from exploiting black labor, exploiting black resources, and so it's just a continuation of that, and we saw that throughout the 20th century with black codes, where we
Mm-hmm.
would create laws to just fine people for really not even not even serious offenses, just to get them into jails and prisons. And in that sense, we're funneling people to make money from them, because at
Right.
the end of the day, um, folks are going into jails and prisons and working for companies to make money for those companies.
Right.
And so a lot of it is about exploitation of black labor, black resources that has really been at the foundation of the country.
And let's talk about the fine system, because I think that like that's one of when you look at the detention centers and when you look at the overall prison industrial complex, uh, the fine system is like one of the most damaging aspects of the collateral aspect of it, because in some situations you can opt out. I can opt out from commissary, right? I might not can't opt out for medical, but I can opt out for commissary. I can opt out for packages. I can opt out from buying books. I can opt out from buying different things from the commissary, be it music, or I can opt out from email. I can, write a letter, but I can't opt out from the fine. Because once the fine is imposed, the monies and that's being taken, whatever the money I get, they taking even though they're not supposed to. Talk about the fine system.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. That's definitely one of the most predatory aspects of the system. One, because of just the high cost of some of the fines. In DC, you can have fines over $250,000
Yeah,
for an offense, for one offense. And
right.
so when you get charged and convicted of any offense, those fines also add up. So it's they all go on top of each other. But the other reason why it's so predatory is, again, because of some of the mechanisms that they have to force you to pay.
That's right. That's right. Come on, talk
And
about that.
and probably the most predatory way that they go about forcing people to pay is the threat of reincarceration. So
Right,
if you don't pay, you can be incarcerated up to a year in DC. That's um, you know the case in a lot of other places throughout the country, and
right,
could even be incarcerated for longer. But then, there's other ways, in terms of if you don't pay, and there's certain financial responsibility obligation programs that different jails or prison systems have. But essentially, um, you enter into a payment plan where you agree to pay off a certain amount. Every month, every
right,
quarter, and if you don't make those payments, you can lose your access to the phones,
right,
get restricted in terms of how much you can purchase through commissary, um, get on restricted housing, and so many other ways
right,
where they're coercing people to pay. Um, and it is important too, because a lot of those fines, they're supposed to go towards victims of crime,
right,
um, and a lot of times, the fines that are collected is only a very small drop of the bucket of how much actually goes towards victims. So there's definitely a lot of different layers when it comes to that, but it's definitely one of the more predatory parts of the system.
and then and another part of the hidden cost and the impact that it has is uh the visitations where uh monies are given to put on what we call books, where I guess somebody put some money on my books. Talk about that, because I know when I was in the county jail, they was taking, like, if somebody put $10, they were taking two. Give me the money, where before I could just send a money order in, or before I could put cash, I could send cash, I could drop off cash. But now it's a system where they tell you that you have to use JPay, or you have to use one of them pay mechanisms, and then or a kiosk be in the lobby of the jail, and they tell you that if you want to give some money up, then you have to use the kiosk, and if your family member is on your family member is going to give you some money, your family member give you $20, you might get 15 of it. Talk about that part of the how is that being regulated or orchestrated, really?
So yeah, I mean, when it comes to those types of payments, um, a lot of times they can take money, as long as you owe a certain fine amount in fines, they can take, up to, I believe it's 50% of any amount that you
Right.
get, whether that's earned or if somebody sends that to you.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, the money that's being sent, goes right back into the system. And so the folks that are incarcerated really don't see all of that money, you know, at any point, pretty much any time. So
Right. Right.
um,
Well,
yeah,
when we look at like I said, the commissary, when commissary is privatized, it's like they got different corporations. When I left prison, it was Keefe, and then Keefe charged astronomical price. And the crazy part about Keefe is the prices change wherever you at. So in the county, in the detention center, a Roman noodle might be $1.50 or $2. In the system, it might be 60 cents, but it's the same corporation. It's Keefe. And then in other parts of the country, Keefe got a monopoly on commissary. So how are they able to to your knowledge, if you can answer this, how are they able to like get away with that? Where they're able to like that's price gouging really.
yeah. And I'm not, I don't have a lot of information about that. What I can tell you is in DC alone, they collect about $2 million per year just from commissary purchases. That goes right back into the system.
Yeah.
That doesn't go towards supporting folks reentry. That doesn't go towards any type of programming while you're incarcerated. That's just $2 million that Keith and those other companies go to collect, and then go to stock the commissary. So there is a really good research article that just about an appeal that just released and talks just about that, though, about how a lot of the prices that are inside are oftentimes a lot more than the cost of things outside of prisons.
Yeah, and then you had, and I know from experience that prior to them privatizing a commissary, they had in the state system, and this was regulated through legislation, that the proceeds from the commissary, after they restocked, will go to the inmate welfare fund. The inmate welfare fund, in turn, was responsible for providing indigent individuals with uh, their necessities, soap, toothpaste, stamps, uh, and things of this nature. But now that they took that out the equation, the inmate welfare fund is has like a retribution aspect to it in prison, where they'll give you something until you once you become no longer indigent, then you have to pay it back. This is what the privatization has created in a collateral sense to the prison industrial complex has created in the prison system. But I think I remember in your report that the cost of people that's incarcerated paying is to stay in prison. Like I'm in a detention center, I'm on work release, and I gotta pay money to stay on the work. Was you able to glean anything out of that?
Yeah. So and just one other thing about the welfare fund, because that's a really important point. It's only so that definitely was a system that was intended to support inmates. Um, it's when they were actually doing that, though, it was only about 10% of the money that was generated from commissary that was
Right,
going into that welfare fund. So it was only a small drop in the bucket. And then since I would say 2020, they used to do audits of the welfare fund every
yeah,
year to provide some type of transparency about how those funds are being used. It hasn't been done since then. And
right,
so we don't have one, we know, it's predatory, but we also don't know exactly how much is predatory because they don't provide a lot
right,
of that information and data. So that's a whole nother piece is really trying to get them to actually be transparent about what's
yeah,
actually going on.
right,
But then on the other side, when you talk about the work release fee, that's one of the most egregious fees, and it's really just about your room and board. It's just paying to be in, and it's for folks that are transitioning out at a halfway house. So they're, on their way to go back into the communities, but at the same time, any amount that they earn is taxed at a 20%. So if I make, $100, that's $20 getting taken out of that
Right,
automatically,
right,
and
right.
that's before you, if you have any other fines that are owed, that gets taken out then, and then still having to afford to pay to stay in contact with folks. So all this stuff, say that to say all this stuff adds up, and so, especially with the work release fees, that's more than double the tax that we charge for millionaires in DC. So we're charging folks that are on their way back and re-entering society. We're charging them nearly double than what we're charging in taxes for someone making $1 million, which is pretty ridiculous.
And I think that the irony in the whole thing, and really this is the where the abuse is really uh, can be quantified, is the taxpayers, your monies is being taken out to support DC jail. The money, your money, you got money paying for security, money paying for everything going on in the jail. If nobody buy nothing, nobody had no fine, you still gonna put an astronomical budget aside for the maintenance and maintaining of the jail. So the fact that you're taking now and saying that not only we get money from you taxpayers to incarcerate them, house them, but we also get money from them, and that money is going towards to the corporate America and back into the jail. So that's the irony in the whole matter, like that you're double dipping at the expense and at the of a person that's indigent or otherwise. But talk about the impact that it be having on family members.
For sure, yeah. And this is the, I think, one of the biggest pieces, in terms of families. A lot of times folks cannot afford all those different costs, whether it be phones, commissary, medical, the fines themselves by themselves. So oftentimes you have to rely on family, and we don't have really good data or information about DC specifically, but we know across the country, families are spending over 13.5 over $13,000 on just on court costs.
Mm.
Um, and then, when you think about some of the commissary and phone fees alone, um, across the country, families are spending over $3 billion and just in fees for phones and commissaries. That's $3 billion from the pockets of everyday people, in addition to taxpayers paying for the maintenance, the construction of jail. So
Yeah, yeah.
the result is a lot of times that um, folks don't have a lot of times, folks don't have resources to help support folks, and so either they're taking money from the bills, or taking
Right.
money from other things. And another thing is, about 2/3 of families that did support their loved ones incarcerated had some trouble meeting their basic needs,
Yeah, I
just
can
from
believe that.
support.
Yeah.
So about 2 out of every 3 people are having trouble just supporting basic needs, just because of being able to support their loved one while they're behind bars. So that is one of the bigger issues, is when we think about the impact of families, to brothers, sisters, mothers, but children as well, and the generational impact that has, is something that I think we need to be thinking more about too.
Right. Man, when you talking about 2.5 million people locked up, confined, then not to count like the 2.5 million that's under the criminal justice system, you're talking about almost 5 million people that are justice involved on some level, shape, form, fashion, that have an obligation. You pay for it, some paying for urinalysis, some paying for the box to be on electronic monitor, some paying for to be confined to a shelter, some paying for to be able to go back and forth on work release. But I noticed this here, none of this money is going towards child support. They haven't constructed no, which would be like idealistic if you was to take this money that you're talking about and help pay for the incarcerated parents' child obligation. That obligation is going to follow them once they get out. So in addition to like not having no money, having a fine, now you have an obligation with the state or city to pay child support. But Mike, tell our audience how they can get a copy of this report so they can look at it for themselves and make their own determination on whether or not this is something that they as a taxpayer support.
Definitely. You can find the report on our website, dcfpi.org. And again, it's called the Hidden Price of Justice. Yeah, definitely happy to talk with anyone who is interested. I appreciate you having me on the show today.
All right, thank you. There you have it, the real news, Rattling the Bars. Somewhere along the line, I heard this saying that crime doesn't pay. Man, crime is paying off astronomically. It's not paying for the victims. It's not paying for the victims of the person that was victimized. It's not paying for the victim that's been victimized by the criminal justice system. It's not paying off for the family members. It's paying off for corporate America and corporate America only. It's paying off for capitalists, and it's paying off in big dividends. We need to really pull back the cover off of this. And as taxpayers, y'all should be outraged that somebody's asking you to raise your taxes, and your tax dollars is going to something that if they gave you a choice to say, where my tax dollars should go, I'm quite sure you wouldn't say that your tax dollars should go towards making a fat cat fatter. There you have it, Rattling the Bars and Real News. We ask that you continue to support Rattling the Bars and the Real News because guess what? We are actually the real news.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.